Hello and welcome back to Hoover and Espresso, and today we are back and we've had 1 week since The Vanquishers. It does not feel like it's been a week since The Vanquishers, but it has. I guess not having an episode of Doctor Who to look forward to does kind of make the week go faster, which is weird because you'd think it'd be the other way around. But nevertheless, here we are 1 week since the Doctor Who finale to Flux, and I've had a week to think about this series, both positive and negative things about it, and I just thought, well, no series is perfect. Before we get into this, I don't think there's been a single series where I could rate every single episode 10 out of 10. Neither have I felt there's ever been a perfect Doctor Who story. Like, even my favourite episode, like Forest of the Dead, Silence in the Library, that two-parter, I'll admit it still has flaws, even though I'll rate it 10 out of 10 and say it's my favourite ever story. There are flaws in it. That story. It is impossible to get the perfect story, in my opinion. But I just want to get that out of the way before we get into the review of this series, because I have really enjoyed Flux as an experience. I think it's been one of the best Doctor Who series there have been, both on Twitter. I felt like the negative opinions that there have been for previous series have been lessened. I thought there was a lot more fan tolerance, apart from the usual suspects, than normal, which I felt was really nice as an experience, particularly as I haven't had Twitter for other series, so I don't really know outside the Chibnall era what being on social media when a Doctor Who series has been like. So it's nice to have at least just a nice positive experience of watching Doctor Who on the air. So before we get into any of the characters or anything to do with like the production wise, let's talk about the writing of Series 12. Obviously there have only been two real writers on this series. Chris Chibnall and Maxine Alderton got a co-writer's credit for episode 4, and I kind of talked about what I thought she contributed to it there. So I'm going to talk about just Chris Chibnall. Maxine Alderton was great. She always is. I think she's a tremendous writer, and I hope that Russell T Davies brings her on board for season 14, or just his era in general, depending on how he wants to do it. He might not even do it in series of this, we will see. But Chris Chibnall as a writer in this series, I think, has really grown. And I mean, I've been thinking now as Doctor Who Flux as a box set now, as a one continuous story, rather than these sort of individual episodes that we'd had from his era. And obviously this is something a format that he worked with previously with like Broadchurch, which was incredibly successful for him. It was a big rating smash hit at the time, and it was also like critically praised. I think it won awards at the time. It definitely put Olivia Colman on the map, and she's in everything now. So I mean, clearly something was right with that formula, and I think this series of Doctor Who has proved that is his strength. While I think he did some great individual episodes for Doctor Who and Torchwood, I do think this has probably been the tightest his writing has ever been. I think the first episode was very compact, fast-paced throughout, and we had the information dump episode, which was episode 3, which my mum described as the hump episode. I mean, it was still very engaging for me, and it was one of the highlights of the series for me, because Joe Martin was in it, but still. I loved the chemistry that Jodie brought to it, and the writing was still there. Like, the exposition, I know a lot of people complain, his writing is too exposition-y, but actually, how else are you going to get that across? You can't show all of that in a show for BBC, which has a very limited budget, and they're clearly throwing everything at this series budget-wise, so you can't just have everything. So I think he gets the exposition across in a good way, in this sense, particularly with Once Upon a Time, where we do get placed in these situations. We don't just get told about the siege of Atropos, we actually get to see it, which I think is a vast improvement on some of the exposition, like the infamous scene in Fugitive of the Jadoon, where there's like this tractor beam is putting the TARDIS on the Jadoon shot, and I know everyone can see that still, but yeah, I think it was a lot better. I thought his comedy was on point with this series. It was hilarious, start to finish. Every episode, I found myself something to laugh at. And that's something, I mean, Doctor Who is cheesy, it is campy, and that's part of its appeal. I mean, there's no shame in that. And I really loved some of the great stuff with the Sontarans, like the chocolate line, the addiction that the Sontarans had. I thought it was hilarious. All the stuff with Carvanista and Dan and the Wok and everything. It just felt so wonderfully Doctor Who. And I just thought that's definitely down to Chris Chibnall. He really brought something to this series. Along with casting of John Bishop, who we'll get onto later, who I thought also really lifted this series comically as well. The actual storyline of the Flux, I do think kind of petered out towards the end. And this isn't actually a problem with Flux. I had this realisation when I was talking to my friends about the Marvel shows. And actually, I mean, Chris Chibnall hasn't had particularly great finales, in my opinion. They're all about the same level. I'd say The Times of Children is my favourite finale out of the three of them. But here's the thing about these kind of storytells. I was thinking about the Marvel shows, and actually I thought about them real hard. And I don't think any of them have ever stuck the landing at all, really. I mean, they've all had fairly decent finales, in the same way that I thought The Vanquishers had a fairly decent finale as well. So I think that's more a problem with the format of the storytelling than it is for Doctor Who. Because Marvel, and this is what this show is trying to be, it's not trying to be Broadchurch really, it's trying to be a big budget Marvel show on the sort of heights of like Loki. And to be honest, I think this episode shows a lot of the finale shows a lot of the flaws with Loki. I think that episode is very much, I think that episode, even more than Chris Chibnall, that final episode of Loki, in my opinion, is just an exposition fest. It's literally them sitting down for 30 minutes. I could not cope with the finale of Loki. But yeah, I still enjoy the Marvel shows. I still liked WandaVision, I still liked Loki. And I think that's because they're written all very good up until the end. And while I do think that those 4 episodes before the final 2 are really standouts of Doctor Who in general, maybe they did kind of peter out towards the end. And of course, my grievances with the Timeless Child arc kind of don't get addressed. My feelings towards the Timeless Child arc, they just don't address the Timeless Child really at the end. It just kind of becomes a bit worthless. But that was my only real complaint in terms of the writing of Flux, really. So yeah, that's my thoughts on the writing of Series 13. I think overall, it was a vast improvement above Series 11 and 12 for Chris Chibnall overall. Maybe the last 2 episodes weren't as good as some of the other finales. I'd probably put it on par with Ransquare Kolos. And then I'd just have Timeless Child just a bit above it, because I do actually really like that finale in general. But yeah, writing, it was solid stuff for Chris Chibnall, really. It's just not as good as it could have maybe been, I guess, at the end. But again, I don't think it's the fault, I think it's the format's fault. So, first up, let's talk about the 13th Doctor herself, Jodie Whittaker, who returns for her 3rd and what seems to be her last series as the Doctor. And this has been an interesting one for me. This has probably been her best performance as the Doctor yet. I think episode by episode, consistently, her performance got better and better. Like, I mean, she was great. I thought it when she came into Halloween Apocalypse, I thought she was doing really great there. And I thought that was her best performance, and then it just kept getting better and better. This is not from her from not being good to being really good. This is from going good to really, really good. So I was really happy with her performance this series. I thought she had some really great moments. I do have to say she bounced off really well off Dan, and I loved her moments, like her emotional closeness to Yaz in this series as well. I thought Jodie and Mandit really brought that across really well in episodes like Survivors of the Flux, and of course the finale as well, The Vanquishers. I thought they really had a great sort of relationship by the end of the series, and I'm very glad we got our Thasmin moments, even if it will never be official on screen. I mean, I hope it is, but I don't think it will be, sadly. But still, it's nice to have those moments. I think Jodie really killed it this series. She really was excellent. I think, again, she had great comedic timing with Dan, as I mentioned, and as a group. Although we don't see much of them, I am very much looking forward to seeing them as a group in the specials. I hope they get more time together, because I just really love their dynamic. I don't think it's the best companion Doctor dynamic of the series, in the show in general. I was kind of hoping maybe I'll be really pleasantly surprised by Dan. I wasn't, but still, I mean, I still really liked Dan. I just he wasn't as good as I was expecting him to be, but we'll get to him later. But still, I just thought they were a really fun dynamic, and I just thought they were a great team, and Jodie really sold that for me. So yeah, Jodie was really great this series. I think her standout moment, although I hate the fact that she does it, I really like the moment where she does throw away the sort of fob watch, because she is really like selling her acting there. Like the music, everything comes together in that scene, and while I don't like what happens in terms of writing, I can appreciate Jodie really sold that performance, and it was probably the best performed scene along with the music of the series for me personally, even if I don't like what actually happened with it. I was going mad when I first saw it, but as I've rewatched it since, I appreciate the intensity of that moment. So, after 3 seasons, I feel like we finally gotten to have a real proper, like, glimpse at Yaz as a character. Like, I mean, she got some great character development in episodes like Can You Hear Me in Series 12, and I thought she was really good on point in resolution, to be fair. I don't think she got much to do in Series 11, really. She got a couple of nice moments, but I think she has really shone here in Series 13. And this is the thing, I know a lot of people are calling out the sort of plot of this arc of her becoming like the Doctor as being too much like Clara. I would agree with that point if she did actually end up dying because of it. If she ends up dying, I'll agree, then yeah, it was completely copied from Clara. But actually, I think this idea that maybe she becomes stronger because she becomes like the Doctor, because obviously I think this Doctor is one that takes less risks. I think she's much kinder and sort of less god warlike type thing than Peter Capaldi was. I have to take into account that the 13th Doctor is very different from the 12th Doctor. So I think for her to become the 13th Doctor would be very different from Clara becoming too much like the 12th Doctor. So I like this arc that she's becoming more Doctor-like. She's sort of a very leader type character. I think I liked how she took the sort of lead in sort of the survivors of the Flux. I thought that was her highlight of the series for me. Her wandering about with all those lines about it's not these two you have to worry about, it's not me you have to worry about, it's these two rather. I thought that was a really great line for her. She was just on point. She had some great costumes actually. I loved the costume she got for 1903 or whatever that she was in, 1904 wasn't it? So yeah, I thought it was a really nice sort of. I think particularly as I feel like she has been done dirty in a way, because Mandip Gill clearly shows she's a great actress. Like in Village of the Angels, she has this really emotional sort of connection to Peggy. Like she full on cries when she shows more emotion than Peggy does when her sort of guardians get killed. I thought that moment was really intense actually, like crying with her eyes open because she's still got to stare at the weeping angel. It's just intense, and she really gives such a great performance. I really feel like she gave everything into Series 13, and as I say, she really added to the companion dynamic by being able to bring up Dan and sort of give him the sort of what's what on the being with the Doctor, and I just thought she was really great. I loved how she had the relationship she had with Vinda in War of the Sontarans as well, further adding to that sort of doctoriness. I think she's probably, if they don't end up killing her, I think it could end up being a really strong character arc for her. I'm looking forward to seeing where it takes her in the specials as well, because I think there's still places you could go with her arc and this sort of relationship she has with the Doctor. I also really loved the scene at the end, because obviously throughout Series 13, Yaz has no idea what the Doctor learned in the time as children unless she told her off screen. So that final scene where where the Doctor finally confesses to her, I love that she was on it when she knew the Doctor was bullshitting her. Like she knew when the Doctor was lying to her, and she really gives it to the Doctor. I think it's really funny. Well, not funny, but I really liked sort of the way she dealt with the Doctor in those situations. Like the scene at the end of Once Upon a Time when she's like, what does it have to do with you? And then the Doctor snaps back at her and she's like, oh, is everything have to be a discussion with you? I love that she's questioning the Doctor. I mean, not many companions have the guts to do it. I don't think Dan would ever have had the guts to question the Doctor. So it's nice that we have that sort of kind of companion as well. It kind of makes her unique as a companion to me. So yeah, Yaz gets a thumbs up from me in this series. So our final member of the TARDIS trio is Dan the man, or Dan the shopping man, Dan the Plasterer, question mark? Because it doesn't get mentioned in the entire series. I'd love to know why he was told he wasn't allowed to say that. Because I think he said something about being a plasterer in a university meeting or something, and then he got, like, flagged by the BBC or something. I remember that vaguely. He might have told a few other things, like Sontarans being in it and what. But other than that, I think that was the main headline, that he was a plasterer, and it just never gets mentioned. You get one mention to, he said, you got a trade, do that, from, like, Diane. She says that's about it. I mean, you could have just said, Dan, you're a plasterer, do that, instead, and at least it would make sense hiding that as a secret. But still, I mean, they might address it. Maybe the spring special will all be about how Dan is a plasterer from Liverpool, because, and I mean, they could bring it up in either the Daleks, to be fair. I doubt that would be the main focus of the Centenary special, but hey, I could be wrong. Either way, John Bishop was a lovely presence in this series. I think he does a lot of what Graham did, but slightly better. I get the feeling that, because obviously John Bishop is a slightly more sort of comedic actor anyway, although Bradley Walsh had his moments of comedy, like, he definitely had those moments. I just think Dan had a better dynamic with Yaz and the Doctor, personally. He didn't really have any particularly dramatic moments. I do think he had a couple of moments where he could have been a bit more dramatic, like when Carvanista is sort of moping about in his cell in the finale. He's had his entire race wiped out, and Dan just continues to mock him, which I thought was a bit of a mistake, personally, although that's more to do with the writing than John Bishop as an actor, to be fair. I just maybe would have said something, because that's clearly... I do, particularly the finale, it felt like we had many Adric moments, where there were moments of deep emotion, but they kind of got glossed over very quickly. But that's one maybe complaint to go back to writing, I guess, but still, it is relevant to Dan. But yeah, overall, I thought Dan was a strong presence. I don't think he's really had that much to do, though. I mean, much like Yaz in this Series 11, I think he's had more to do than Yaz did in Series 11, but I think he's sort of at a point in, like, sort of Yaz in Series 12, in the sense that he's had stuff to do, he's just not, like, had that much to do. We know who he is. He's a funny character, and I like him. I love all the fact that they brought it to Liverpool as well, because obviously he's a famous Liverpudlian sort of comedian. So I think that was nice that they did that, and I love that all the references to Liverpool actually throughout the series, like having the Sontarans in Liverpool, that's just such iconic imagery. And if I ever go back to Liverpool, I have been before, I'd love to go back again now and see the Museum of Liverpool and just imagine take my Sontaran figure and get a picture from Instagram. That would be hilarious. But still, I love that they brought it to Liverpool because of him as well. So yeah, I guess, and John Bishop has really been such a great sort of supporter of the fandom as well. I mean, he's been supporting, like, Doctor Who Poops sort of Evil Dan memes, which I just think is hilarious. I love that he's interacted with the fan base as well online as well, which is something you don't really get from many actors from the show. I know that the fandom can be quite a toxic place sometimes, but I mean, it would still be nice to have a bit more of that from time to time, particularly from, like, Jodie, who, she has the moments, to be fair. She filmed that amazing lockdown moment video for last year, and that went viral, I think. So that was nice as well. So yeah, John Bishop is Dan. I just can't wait to see more of him, and I hope we do get more of him, because I know the focus for Series 13 is very much, the specials are probably going to be on Jodie's regeneration, so it would be nice to have some more Evil Dan moments before the series is out. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Dan. Now I could go on forever about the guest cast. There were some really great people in this series. The In-Betweeners guy in Once Upon a Time was hilarious. The two old people in sort of Village of the Angel were deliciously annoying, I guess, because they were just sort of... I loved their arguing, and I loved how the woman got back at the guy because he was a bit of a horrible person. Yeah, moving on. So yeah, overall, like, the people who were only in like one episode were all great. I loved Peggy, like older Peggy as well, although I wish she had a bit more to do. I mean, there are some characters who I feel like were kind of cut off in terms of how relevant they were to the story. For example, Belle and Vinda, who were built up as very important characters, and this is not just me being spiteful because my theory about them being the Doctor's parents was false. That theory kind of got out of proportion, I think. I think a lot of people took that on board, but still, I know a lot of people didn't want it to be true, so I guess they're happy it wasn't true. I'm mixed on it, because in a way, it kind of makes their entire reason for being there a bit pointless. I mean, they're still nice people, nice characters. I love their reunion at the end. I love this sort of overall message going through their arc about how the mission of the universe is to save the ones you love. I thought that was a really nice little touch to the story. I just didn't think they were as relevant by the end of it as some of the other characters. Carvanista, again, I feel like a lot of these characters had reasons to be there, maybe, in a longer version, maybe where we got to explore more about their characters, but it got cut off because it was, I think a lot of people are saying it was supposed to be 8 episodes and it was cut to 6. I could be wrong on that, don't quote me, but if that is true, I'd be curious to see what they would have written out or weren't able to include into the story. Taking with Carvanista, he's a great comedic presence in the story. Craig Ells is incredible in this series. Truly, I'm not a big fan of dogs, but I love Carvanista. I think he's hilarious. I think he's so adorable as well. I felt so bad for him at the end when obviously his entire species is wiped out. Although maybe it would have been nice to see a couple of Lupari die, but that's not what happens off screen. Overall though, the great design as well, like the costuming for that was incredible. I really thought that was really nice. Jericho for Carvanista, I'm just a bit curious about how much of his arc was left off the table, because obviously that line explained that he can't talk about the Doctor's past because he died, but it might have been nice to see them talk about that a bit more. Jericho and Claire, let's say, yeah, Claire. I think Claire was, while she was an instantly alluring character, didn't continue that air of mystery as the series progressed. I mean, it was great to find out about her. I thought she was great as an actress. I just kind of think they could maybe have done more with her character. Annabelle Scully was really great as a character in this series. And Jericho, I just thought, particularly in the finale, I felt like she got pushed to the side. She didn't really feel, like she was part of the story, but she just didn't really feel like she needed to be there. But she was anyway, I guess. Jericho had a great presence in both episode 4 and 5-6, and ended up feeling more emotionally attached to him than Vinda, which was a bit disappointing because I was really looking forward to Vinda. They built him up to be this big character, and he kind of just wasn't really. He was only really in episode 3 with the main gang, and then sort of arrives again in the finale, but that's about it. There's also Diane, who just sort of kind of felt a bit pointless by the end also, because she didn't really feel like much of a hostage, because we didn't really get to know her, really. We got 1-2 scenes with her. She was hostage, and then she popped up in episode 3. I admit she showed some like great promise when she's around the sort of, passenger, and she's sort of like with the gun, and she seems very experienced, and she can tell she's had a lot of time in there, which we obviously is off screen, which is a bit annoying, but still, I think she could have been good had she had more time. So yeah, they were great. Jericho and Claire, let's say, yeah, Claire. I think Claire was, while she was an instantly alluring character, didn't continue that air of mystery as the series progressed. I mean, it was great to find out about her. I thought she was great as an actress. I just kind of think they could maybe have done more with her character. Annabelle Scully was really great as a character in this series. And Jericho, I just thought, particularly in the finale, I felt like she got pushed to the side. She didn't really feel, like she was part of the story, but she just didn't really feel like she needed to be there. But she was anyway, I guess. Jericho had a great presence in both episode 4 and 5-6, and ended up feeling more emotionally attached to him than Vinda, which was a bit disappointing because I was really looking forward to Vinda. They built him up to be this big character, and he kind of just wasn't really. He was only really in episode 3 with the main gang, and then sort of arrives again in the finale, but that's about it. There's also Diane, who just sort of kind of felt a bit pointless by the end also, because she didn't really feel like much of a hostage because we didn't really get to know her, really. We got 1-2 scenes with her. She was hostage, and then she popped up in episode 3. I admit she showed some, like, great promise when she's around the sort of, passenger, and she's sort of, like, with the gun, and she seems very experienced, and she can tell she's had a lot of time in there, which we obviously is off screen, which is a bit annoying, but still, I think she could have been good had she had more time. So yeah, they were great. Overall, Doctor Who Flux, I think, is a really standout series and stands out, at least for me, in my top 5 series of Doctor Who. It's really well made from a production standpoint as well. I think it's quite strongly written, even if it doesn't necessarily stick the landing at the end. I think it's a unique type of Doctor Who storytelling that I don't think we really had, and I hope we get a bit more of it in the next era with Russell T Davies. So it'd be really nice if they continued this serialised storytelling. And the cast overall, I mean, there's so many cast members I didn't talk about. So yeah, overall, just a really solid series. I really did enjoy this series overall. And I can't wait for Eve of the Daleks. So yeah, there'll be more coverage for that when we come to it. But yeah, thanks for watching. And overall, I'm going to rate it as a story overall and give it a sort of 8.2 out of 10. Because I think it was really quite a solid series as an overall story. So yeah, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. There's so much I wasn't able to cover. So there's also my reviews if you want to check out them as well. So yeah, overall, thanks for watching, and goodbye.